All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital's Teaching Kitchen. My name is Chef Emily. I'm so delighted that you're all joining me here today on this beautiful day to learn about eggs. So we're going to be discussing sort of more of a savory focus today. I realized as I was putting this class together, a class on eggs could be a week long because there's so much to talk about. So we're focusing on savory applications and uses of eggs today. And I'm so delighted that you joined me. So just a few Zoom ground rules before we jump in. Keep your microphones muted throughout the presentation. Everybody should be muted upon entry, but sometimes we accidentally unmute ourselves, and that's fine. Just make sure you check, make sure your microphone is muted. And if you have any questions, as always, put them into the chat box. And Alita, who's moderating our program today, is going to be reading me your questions throughout. So thank you so much, Alita, for being here and for doing that.
You're welcome.
So as we begin, we will never really know why chickens were domesticated, but they have been more valued for their prolific egg production than for their meat. So the word egg actually comes from an Indo-European root meaning bird, and chickens are indeterminate layers, meaning that they will produce more eggs than the determinate layers. So that's one of the reasons they became very popular. They underwent more evolutionary change between the years of 1850 to 1900 than the chicken did in its entire lifetime as a species. So during those 50 years, something happened. A political opening between England and China brought specimens of previously unknown Chinese breeds to the West. So these birds kind of created like a chicken breeding craze, just as we've heard of tulip mania from the 17th century. The Dutch had tulip mania. Well, there was this chicken breeding craze as well. These poultry shows were very popular. Hundreds of new breeds developed during this time. And today, an egg or a meat chicken is usually the product of one of four purebred grandparents that kind of came out of this chicken breeding craze. So that's a little history for all of you. Many ranchers now have 1 million or more laying hens. Today's typical layer is born in an incubator, eats a diet that's lab generated, lives and lays on wire and in a cage and under lights for about a year and produces anywhere between 250 to 290 eggs. So this is the fully industrialized egg laying process. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more today about what the difference is between cage-free, free-range, pasture-raised, organic, vegetarian-fed, hormone-free, certified humane. So there are all these different labels now. So we're going to break down exactly what those mean a little bit more towards the end of class. We're going to be cooking, of course. Today we're going to be making two recipes. One is a quinoa patty with poached egg on top. And in this recipe, we're going to both be using the egg in the patty as a binder, just to show you how that works. And then I'm going to show you how to poach an egg to put over the top of it. The other recipe we're making today is a green shakshuka. So if you're not familiar with shakshuka, it sort of took the culinary world by storm. It's often tomato and red pepper based, which is delightful, but I wanted to kind of make a green version to add more greens into this dish. So this is going to be a green shakshuka using, look at all of this beautiful, beautiful spinach. This is from our own garden. And we're going to use that green spinach, and everything's going to cook down. We're going to add in some onions, some jalapenos, some garlic, and we're going to kind of make these little divots in the mixture and put the eggs in the divots and cook them that way. So we're going to make those two dishes, and I'm also going to show you how to scramble and poach. Any questions before we begin?
No questions, just a comment about you did a lot of really great chicken research.
It was very interesting to learn about. So thank you. I'm glad you appreciate the history. I think it's important for us to think about this stuff. So this is our quinoa, cooked quinoa. We're starting with that. And this is nice and easy. I chopped up the jalapeno. We're going to add that in. I'm going to show you how to chop up the jalapeno for the next recipe. So that is just to speed things along. I have 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. So that's going to pop in. About 1/3 of a cup of breadcrumbs. These are whole wheat breadcrumbs that I'm using today. If you're gluten-free, you could substitute with gluten-free breadcrumbs. That would be fine. We're going to add some shredded Gouda or cheddar. You can use either one. About 1/2 cup of cottage cheese. This is going to add some nice protein to this dish. Our eggs, which are going to help to bind. So crack, and then I go over the bowl because I don't want the shells going into the bowl. So I usually crack on the counter and then into the bowl. So this is really very easy. Everything goes in. Just one note on your recipes. I accidentally put 1 cup of onion. It should say 1/2 cup. So I'll make that change in your packets and send it to you after class as well, so you have the most updated version. Salt, pepper, right? Everything just pops right into the bowl. This one's really nice and easy. Our chopped onion, 1/2 cup, or shallots. These are shallots, whichever you prefer. And then I also have some fresh chives. These are also from the garden. So I opted for these instead of scallions because I could just pick them today, which is really nice. We're starting to enter that time of year where everything just is popping up. It's very exciting. The chives are coming back. Our perennials are blooming, and very exciting time of year. So we're going to chop up our chives and add those in as well. Everything's going to get mixed together. Excuse me, we're going to pop this on a sheet pan just to refrigerate them for 5 minutes or so. All right, I think I needed a little bit of a bigger bowl here. I think, but we might be okay. Let's see how we do. And while I'm mixing this, does anyone want to share their favorite egg, like way to eat eggs? Favorite ways to eat eggs? If anyone wants to put that into the chat, just so that we begin to learn from each other and connect to one another. So one of my favorite ways is poached. I really love poached eggs, so I'm going to teach you guys how to make that today. And I also love a good omelet. But yeah, I think like my go-to is poached, because you can put a poached egg on anything. You can put it over your veggie burger like we're doing here, or you could add it over a salad, and the yolk kind of becomes like a sauce with the salad. Is really good. What else do I like to put poached eggs on? Asparagus, like do a nice dish with just some simple blanched asparagus with a poached egg on top. That's really good too. So lots of things you can do with your poached eggs. All right, so I'm just kind of, making sure everything gets really well mixed together. And then we're gonna form these into patties and put them in the fridge just for 5 minutes or so they have a little bit of time to firm up. The breadcrumbs will absorb some of the liquid in here, so that'll help to kind of hold the shape. Anything coming in through our chat, Alita?
Yes, a couple of really interesting things here. So Valerie says she likes her eggs with cold tortilla.
Ooh.
Somebody says omelets. Somebody says with kielbasa. Somebody says pickled with beets.
Wow, I love that. Pickled with beets. And when you're pickling, you always get the great probiotics from pickling. That's excellent.
Sheared omelets, eggs Benedict.
Oh yes, delicious.
I don't
Lovely.
know if I said quiche, but they also say cottage cheese pancakes.
Cottage cheese pancakes? Yeah, why not?
Soft boiled with soldiers. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, so soldiers is like when you cut pieces of bread, like pieces of toast, and then you kind of dump them into the egg. It's really very adorable.
Like a French fry.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Egg custard and hard-boiled are the other two.
Custard and hard-boiled. Okay, nice. Yeah, I'm not such a huge fan of hard-boiled eggs, but they're so convenient that I've kind of become one, because it's just very convenient to have a couple hard-boiled eggs, as a snack. It's a great source of protein and just helps give you prolonged energy. So it's a nice thing to have. All right, so these are our patties. Mine are different sizes, but that's okay. And we're gonna pop this into the fridge just for 5 minutes or so, and then we'll cook them up at the end. Any questions about that recipe before I turn to the next one? Super easy, right?
None yet, Chef Emily.
Okay, fantastic. So our next recipe is the green shakshuka. So for this one, I have my spinach, and we're going to be using 4 eggs. This recipe calls for, it makes 8, but I'm doing about half that because smaller pan, smaller kitchen, etc. So we're just going to do 4 eggs today. I have my parsley that I wrap up in a little damp paper towel to keep the leaves nice and fresh. So lots of herbs are going in here. You can use a mix of herbs: parsley, basil, tarragon, chives. You could throw in some dill, so you can play around with different herbs if you'd like. And I'm going to put my gloves on because I'm going to be working with this jalapeno. So you only need about a tablespoon of the jalapeno. So I'm not going to cut the whole thing. And you also need, well, I guess I'll start with the onion first. And to make your shakshuka, you are going to need a pan with a lid. So make sure you have one, a lid that fits. And I'm just going to turn this over a low heat to kind of get it heating up. So we'll start by dicing our onion. Thank you for sharing your egg dishes. I really love hearing from everybody and what you like to make in your own kitchens. And it's always inspiring when you hear, how other people like their eggs. Gives you ideas of how to make it yourself in your own home. So the quinoa patty, I'm going to make a poached egg for that towards the end. So a couple things about eggs themselves. Egg shells will differ in color depending on the breed of chicken. So sometimes you'll get a brown egg, sometimes you'll get a white egg, sometimes you'll get a blue egg, which is really fun. So you can get different colored eggshells. It's just a different breed of chicken. Doesn't mean anything else. And then the egg yolks, the color of the egg yolk really depends on the diet of the hen. We have a jumping onion today. It depends on the diet of the hen. So if you have a hen that has a really rich diet with lots of bugs and beta carotene, it's going to have a really dark, rich yolk. So if you have an egg that has a really pale yolk and it isn't particularly bright and orange and has that nice sheen that these eggs do, then your hen is not having a very good diet. And a poor diet actually changes the nutrients in the egg. So you might think an egg is just an egg, but in fact, it's not. It really depends on the diet of the hen. That changes the nutrition in the egg. I mean, macronutrient wise, it's more or less the same. You're still going to have, the same amount of protein and stuff, but you're not going to have the same amount of vitamins and trace minerals and things like that. So we'll just start chopping up our onion, nice and small, and we're just going to saute this in our pan. A little narrow here at the bottom, so I'm just going to flip that over. And we're going to start with some olive oil here. Just enough to coat the bottom. Don't need that much. And we're going to start sauteing our onion. A couple other things I wanted to mention is the nutrition of eggs. So I mentioned that eggs have protein. Everybody knows that now, right? So eggs are a great source of protein. One egg, medium size, has 6 or 7 grams of protein, 6 grams of fat, and small amounts of sodium as well. And an egg averages 70 to 80 calories depending on the size. Another thing I wanted to mention is a good egg versus a bad egg. So sometimes we keep eggs in our refrigerator, maybe what we think is a little too long. And how can you tell if the egg is good or not? So we don't want to waste our eggs, right, and just throw them out because they are precious food. But there's a way to tell. A good egg will, so an egg floats in a bowl of water. If an egg floats in a bowl of water, it's no good. So you put an egg, bowl of water, and it comes up. That means an air bubble has been created in here. That means the egg's no longer good. If you put the egg in a bowl of water and it sinks to the bottom, that egg is still good to go. And then what makes a good egg, we mentioned, it's a good hen. So a hen with healthy and nutritious feed that's free of contaminants. Fresher eggs are always the best choice whenever you're cooking. Well, I say always, but there is one exception, which is that if you are hard boiling an egg, it'll be easier to peel if the egg is at least a few days old. So that's the only kind of exception where where a freshest egg would not be best. But otherwise, I use the freshest there is whenever I can. Any questions on anything so far? We'll work on our garlic and our jalapeno.
So yeah, there's 2 comments and a question. So the additional entries for how to use eggs, one was frittata and the other one was
nice.
A good old egg salad. So those
excellent. Yeah. I love that.
The question is, how long can you keep hard-boiled eggs?
So I keep them for about 5 days. I think I just feel like they start to get a little stinky after 5 days. Some people will only keep them for 3. So it's still a little bit mixed out there of how long you can keep it for. I'm not sure if I actually included that in your packet or not. I don't think I did. But I tend to usually just go up to 5 days, no more than that, because then they don't smell so good and they don't taste so good. Any other questions?
No.
All right. So let's get our garlic in here. We just have a little sizzle under this pan. Oops, my headphone's pulling out here. All right. And I'm just going to give this a rough chop. We're going to toss this garlic in with the onion, add nice flavor, activate all those sulfur compounds in the garlic that are going to be really good for us. So pop that in. And then with our jalapeno, as I mentioned, we only need a tablespoon. So I'm just going to take off the very end, cut it in half. Make sure you pull out any seeds that are in there because they're super spicy. You can leave them in if you like super spicy. You can definitely bump up the heat. I'm not a huge heat person, but the jalapeno does add a nice flavor as well as just a little bit of heat, not too much because I can still eat it, and so I can still eat it. That probably means that it's good enough for anybody else because I am a real baby when it comes to spice. If you wanted spicier, leave a few seeds in. If you wanted no spicy, take the seeds out. All right, we've got our cleaned jalapeno, and we're just going to go for thin strips here. And notice that I'm cutting with the skin side down. It's a lot easier to cut through the flesh than it is to cut through the skin. So I'm just cutting into strips, and then I'll bundle these strips together like a little bundle of firewood. Kind of get everything lined up, and then cut across. So tucking your fingers, right? And then whenever you're working with jalapeno, when we're cutting something small, we tend to want to get close to it. Please don't do that. You might get some jalapeno juice that kind of pops off of the knife and into your eyes. So remain calm, remain distant, socially distanced from your jalapeno. All right, and we're going to add this in with our onion. Let's add our greens too. Lots of spinach. Going to cook that down. So it says 8 to 10 cups in your packet. So I'm going to do half recipe, so it's going to be, about 4 or so. It's going to cook down a lot. You guys know from cooking greens that they cook down to almost nothing. So be useful to have tongs to really help just move this around. And we'll add a little sprinkle of salt to season. All right, and then we're going to add our herbs as well. So I'm going to add a whole bunch of parsley. This green shakshuka recipe is great if you just have, odds and ends of bunches of herbs left over. Sometimes the recipe will only call for 2 tablespoons of parsley. So we just want to make sure that we use that stuff up and it doesn't end up in the landfill. And this is a great way to do it with our greens. So it's cooking down. I'm just going to take off the thickest stems, but I'm going to leave everything else. These are super thick at the bottom here. So this is sort of what I tend to take off. I'll try to save any leaves if I can. A few extra leaves there. And then these will go into the compost. Or if you have chickens, you can give them your parsley stems. They absolutely love leftover veggie scraps. All right, nice and small, chop this up. And then we're going to pop this into the pan with the spinach. We'll make some indentations. We have to add our veggie stock as well. We're gonna add some vegetable stock. And you can use either like a half and half, or I'm going to use coconut milk today because I was feeling a little nutty. So we're going to add our coconut. And you just want to cook this down together. Then we're going to add our eggs, and this will be done. So it's a great way to include lots and lots of greens, lots of herbs into your dish. So let's add, this is our vegetable stock, low sodium vegetable stock. And this is our coconut milk. So I just measured out about half a cup. You can use the rest in a smoothie, or if you'd like, you can use it in another recipe. Okay, and that's pretty much it. I'm gonna add, kind of simmer this all together until it gets nice and thick, and then we'll add the eggs, and that's it. Any questions about this one?
Yes. So is it safe to eat eggs that aren't pasteurized, like from local farms?
It is safe to eat eggs that aren't pasteurized. And in fact, most of our lives as humans, as a species, our eggs were not pasteurized. So it is safe to eat eggs from farms that are not pasteurized. Just make sure that, you know, you can give your eggs a rinse or a wash before using them. That's one of the things I tend to do. But if you're cooking your egg, generally speaking, the heat is going to take care of anything that's going on there. So yeah, good question.
All right. So the next question is there a difference?
I mean, I guess I should say, I'll speak for myself. I do eat eggs from local farms that are unpasteurized. So for me, it's okay. But if perhaps you have an you're immune compromised, or you have a sensitivity or something that, to be aware of, maybe check it with your doctor instead.
Absolutely. So the next question is there a difference between brown and white eggs?
Brown and white eggs?
Mm-hmm.
No, so it's just a different breed of hen. So if you have a brown egg, it just comes from one kind of hen, and if you have a white egg, it's just another kind of hen.
Okay. Barry made a recommendation here. He says that when he's only made the red shakshuka, but he cuts the red peppers into rings, and he uses eggs instead of the indentation. So that's I
love that, Barry. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome. Yeah, we did a class where we made like eggs in a hole, but our toast was actually red pepper. That was really fun. Yeah, same idea.
And the last question here is, do you ever worry about coconut milk breaking from the heat?
Oh, that can happen. Like you can have like a separation of the coconut milk. That can happen, but usually if you just like turn it down and let it simmer long enough, it kind of unifies again. Yeah. But it doesn't happen very often for whatever reason, I guess. Maybe I don't cook things at a high enough temperature where that separation might occur. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, thank you.
That's it for now.
All right, so let's go get our quinoa burgers. And we're going to cook these up over here. And I'm going to pop the eggs into the green shakshuka back here. This is a very pan-intensive class. Let's see. All right, I'm going to get some water simmering for my poached eggs in a pan. So back here, I've got the green shakshuka. I'm going to pop eggs into each. I'm going to show you a close-up first. So you can see it's nice and thick and saucy. And I'm going to kind of make like little spots, little holes. Maybe I'll just do 3 here. I'll do 3. 3 little holes. And then I'll crack the egg and pop it right into that spot that I made for it. And then just let it simmer until the egg is, you're kind of almost poaching it in a way. It should be nice. The yolk should be runny. If you don't like runny yolks, it's okay. We could still be friends. But I think runny yolks are just delicious. But if you don't like that, just cook this a little bit longer and that'll be fine too. So once I put the egg in each little indentation, I take a little pinch of salt and sprinkle it over each egg just to make sure that it's seasoned well, and I crack a little pepper on top of each egg. Black pepper really helps to kind of absorb all the fat and stuff that's in those eggs. All right, we've got our pan heating up here. Pop this back here. Let's get our pan coated with a little oil, just enough to cover, as you know. And we'll pop a couple of quinoa burgers in here. So this is nice. They firmed up really well. And there's a nice sizzle when they touch the pan. You want to make sure that when they make contact with the pan, there is a good sizzle. All right, I'm just going to do 3 because I don't want to overcrowd the pan. We'll do the other ones later. Any questions about this recipe?
Yes, there's
Easy,
one question.
Right?
Yeah, there's one question from Pam. If you use fresh eggs and make a dessert without cooking the eggs, is it okay?
Oh, Pam, that's a good question. So it's very controversial because some people say yes, some people say no. I certainly have made salad dressings and mayonnaise and things like that with raw egg. Because this is a hospital program, I would say consult your physician. I would say consult your physician and see if raw egg yolks are appropriate for you. And then in my own household, I will say that I have done it many times, and so far, so good. All right, any other questions?
Not yet. Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about these terms, cage-free. While our quinoa burgers are cooking, our water is simmering, and our eggs are cooking in the green shakshuka. We're also going to make scrambled eggs and poached eggs. So don't forget, I have those also to do, but I want to one thing at a time here, or 2 things at a time, I guess. So cage-free is a term that's regulated by the USDA. It basically means that the eggs come from hens that, simply put, they're not in a cage. So they can freely roam around the building or an enclosed area with unlimited access to food and fresh outdoors. So that's cage-free. There's a really interesting book called All About Eggs by Rachel Kong. And she also notes that cage-free facilities actually have more hen-on-hen violence, unfortunately, and lower air quality than facilities that use cages. So I'm not saying to enjoy caged hens. I'm just trying to show the whole picture here. And I'm going to tell you at the end what you need to look for. So that's cage-free. Free range is another USDA term. That means that the eggs come from hens that have some sort of access to the outdoors. So it doesn't mean, however, that the hens actually go outdoors or that the outdoor space is even more than a small fenced-in area. It just implies that there's a door and the hen could go out of it at some point. But if you're a hen in a giant, in a giant barn, and you live at this end of the barn and the door is on this end of the barn, and there's a million hens between you and the door, it's very unlikely that you'll ever get there. So we'll talk about that as well. I'm just going to flip these because they're smelling yummy. Okay. All right, so that is cage-free and free range. The other thing I wanted to mention is pasture raised. So pasture raised is not a term that's regulated by the USDA. Oops, our shakshuka is done. Just show you here. So this is done. You can see the eggs are cooked. I just covered them for a moment. We're gonna get back to pasture raised, don't worry. And when you serve this, you can serve it on its own, or with, a nice piece of toast or something. And I just want to show you, yeah, beautiful. So this is done. The yolk is still runny and soft. So this is completely finished. All right, shakshuka done. So where am I? Pasture raised. So pasture raised is not a term that's regulated by the USDA. However, if a carton says pasture raised and also includes a stamp that says certified humane, and or there's another stamp that says animal welfare approved, it means that each hen was actually given 108 square feet of outdoor space. for every hen, as well as barn space indoors. So certified humane and welfare, animal welfare approved means that each hen has 108 square feet of space. That's bigger than some New York City apartments. So I think that's pretty amazing. So this is an example. You see pasture raised right on there. And then on the back here, you can actually see it says 108 square feet of space. If you notice over here, it says certified humane, and there's also USDA organic. So we'll talk about what that means too. So we've got pasture raised on this label. We have certified humane on this label. So this is a pretty good choice for us. All right, so that's pasture raised. And then if you're looking for your eggs to be local, that means that it has to come from a flock that's located less than 400 miles from the processing facility or within the same state. So local can actually be a term that is not really so local sometimes. For eggs to be organic, that means that the hens have to be fed an organic diet. So we think, oh, that sounds pretty good. These chickens are getting, you know, Whole30 organic, plant-based. Organic diet just means that whatever they're being fed is organic. It doesn't actually translate to a good diet because there's a lot of organic feeds that are just soy, corn, wheat, things like that, that chickens don't really give the chickens that much nutrition. But you can say, oh, but it's organic, right? Because the chicken is eating organic wheat, corn, and soy. So that one's a little bit, little wishy-washy. There's another term, vegetarian fed. It's worth noting that chickens are actually omnivorous. So they love worms, they love bugs and larvae and any crawly thing like that. So, you know, for a chicken to be vegetarian fed might not actually be the best thing for that chicken either. All right, and then hormone free. This one's really, I get a kick out of this one. That means that the hen wasn't administered any hormones, which isn't particularly commendable though, because that hormones and steroids are already banned by the FDA for chickens. So if you say something's hormone free, it's kind of like putting gluten free on an apple. It's like, yeah, because there's no gluten in this. So there shouldn't be any hormones in your chicken eggs anyway. Oops, all right, let's get back here to our burgers. I have a lot to share today. A lot to share today. All right, beautiful. So these are done. They're golden on both sides. They smell amazing. So these are our veggie burgers, and you can freeze these. You know, you've cooked them, you can pop them in the freezer, and then just have them, you know, whenever you need a nice, you know, nice healthy lunch, you've got one ready. So let's get our water here for poaching. I'm gonna bring this to a simmer. And I think that was all the terms I really wanted to go over. Yeah, so given all this information, what should you buy? Cartons that are stamped with the certified humane or animal welfare approved seal are really good bets, because that means the chickens are actually getting 108 feet outside per chicken. And chances are, if they're outside, they're gathering things from the grass and the worms and getting to eat, you know, bugs in their natural environment. So that's sort of what I look for when I'm buying my eggs. So this is Vital Farms. This came from ShopRite. They have these eggs that are small family farms. So this is kind of cool. On the side here, you can actually go and see where the eggs were laid. So you go to vitalfarms.com/farm, and then it's on the side. I don't know if you guys can read that. You can see where the eggs were actually laid, which is kind of cool. Any questions about all that information? My goodness.
Yeah, there's a question for Marianne about pasteurized eggs. Could you explain?
Okay.
She said she never heard of that.
Yeah, so pasteurized eggs, basically, it's one of the ways in which, because a lot of chickens are caged and not in the best environments, they can produce eggs that aren't super clean, to put it mildly. So one of the ways in which they get cleaned and make sure that there's no bacteria on them whatsoever is that they're washed and then they're flash pasteurized. So that's just a way in which it's like a way to completely sterilize the egg, basically. Yeah. Anything else about that? And then we're going to poach our eggs and scramble.
It says here, what do you think about Eggland's fortified eggs?
Okay, so this is interesting. This concept of fortified eggs, like you can add omega-3 into your chicken's diet, and then the egg is going to be higher in omega-3. I kind of feel like if you're getting a bird out into the environment where it's supposed to be, eating the things that it's supposed to be eating, you don't necessarily need to fortify anything because the hen is already getting whatever it needs from the environment. But if you're having an egg from a chicken that's been in a tiny cage getting poor grain feed that's not really what it's supposed to be eating, and then you add, it's kind of like when you fortify, if you see something that's fortified with B12, it's like basically the industry is like taking a B12 vitamin and capsule and powdered it into your flour or whatever else. So I don't know. I feel more strongly about this certified humane or animal welfare approved eggs. I think that's sort of the track that I would go with.
And then there's a question about how do you cook the quinoa from frozen?
Oh, the patties, yeah. So after I have a toaster oven at home, so that's what I tend to do. So I take them out, leave them in the fridge to thaw out for a few hours, and then just pop them in the toaster oven, and it works out pretty well. It doesn't always come out as a perfect patty the same way that it went in. I think that's because like it maybe absorbs some moisture or something. So, but you could also just like throw it in a pan and kind of scramble it up and it'll be good, with a poached egg on top. So.
All right, so the last question here is, does pasteurization affect the egg or just the shell?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that one. I'll have to look that one up. That's a really good question. I'm not sure if it changes like the nutrition that's in the egg or not. Yeah, great question. All right, we'll keep going here. So let's get our egg poached. So I'm going to start by cracking my egg into some kind of a vessel to slide it into the pan gently. And I'm using a wet measuring cup, but you could use like a dish like this will work really well. And most important thing when you're poaching is you want to make sure that your water is simmering and not boiling. So if it's boiling, then the egg is it's going to really kind of mess up the egg whites and they're not going to coagulate very well. So you just want it on a simmer. So it means steam is rising and there's small bubbles happening all around. Okay, so that's simmering. Now you want to just slide your egg along the side of the pan. So if you can see, I'm going up to the edge of the pan and just slowly sliding the egg in. Okay, and when that egg goes in, it might bring the temperature of your pan down a little bit, right? Because if you think about it, that egg is cold and then you're putting it into hot water, so it might bring the temperature of the water down. So you may need to just increase your simmer a little bit when the egg goes in. And then this is a tool you're going to want to have is a slotted spoon. Whenever I'm poaching eggs, definitely fresh eggs are best for poaching. The whites just coagulate a little bit better when they're fresh and they taste better. If you're using older eggs, you can always use a little bit of white vinegar, just a little capful in your poaching water. That'll help the whites to coagulate more quickly. So that's the way in which I poach eggs. So we'll just let this kind of simmer and bubble, and the egg whites coagulate at a different temperature than the egg yolks. I actually included some fun stuff in your packets here, all about eggs. So I included the anatomy of an egg. And then in here, I included simmering eggs in the shell, poaching eggs, scrambling eggs, fried eggs, sunny side up, over easy, and American omelet. So you guys have a lot of egg homework to play around with. But I just wanted to show you the ones that I feel like people get wrong the most, which is the poached egg and the scrambled eggs. So we're just letting this gently poach. And my water doesn't like doesn't actually come over the top of my egg. So you can always take a little bit of the hot water and just kind of baste it over the top, just gently kind of moving it over the top to help cook the top a little bit. I'm doing this in a pan so that you guys can see better, but you could also do this in a pot. I do find it's easier though in a pan than in a pot because it's just a little bit easier to keep an eye on it and a little bit easier to scoop it out than if it's in a pot. So I prefer the pan method. If you're poaching eggs for a large crowd, I think I included this in your packets as well. If you want to serve them later, once you take them out of the pan, you can plunge them into cold water just to stop the cooking. And then at service time, just reheat them briefly in a little warm water. So that's if you're working in a restaurant or you have a bunch of people coming over and you want to serve poached eggs, that's one of the ways you can do it. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to share about poached eggs. Any questions?
There's a question about the term shirred. Is it sheared eggs?
I think that was someone else who put in the chat earlier that that's how they enjoy eating their eggs. So if that person is still around, feel free to answer that question relating to that egg dish, because it's not something that I have heard of. Yeah, but it sounds very interesting. So I'm curious as well.
Yeah, it says here also, when you crack an egg open, there's a little white piece of something in there. Do you need to remove that prior to cooking the egg or mix it into everything? She says mother told her that she should remove it.
You don't have to remove it. You can use every part of the egg. That little white part is actually up here. It's called the shalaz, right? So you can see you can see it on the egg. It's completely normal. It's what keeps the egg yolk kind of in the middle of the egg to protect it. So you can use all parts of the egg. And then I noticed another question. So if you're cooking poached eggs for more than one person, first of all, I'm just going to gently lift this out with my slotted spoon and drain off any water and show you how perfect and beautiful and poached, right? So I have to really get the angle right on this camera. There it is. All right, so you can see, right, this is just perfect. Right, the yolk is still runny. That's what we're looking for. So we serve that right on top with a little arugula, and it goes with our burgers. So if you're making this for more people, bigger pan, right? And then you can crack several eggs in there and do them all at once. It's nice and easy. You could probably, like in a big pan like we did here, you could probably fit, 6 or 7 or 8 eggs in the big pan. So definitely feel free to play around with that. All right, we've got one more, a little humble scrambled egg. So I'm gonna get the pan nice and warm first. And we're going to start by breaking up our eggs. So I'm gonna use the same thing that I used for the poaching egg. So here's 1 and 2. And we're just gonna use a fork to kind of break this up. Any other questions while I'm scrambling here?
So Lynn wants to know why you're not using a special egg poaching pot. She uses it and it makes life easier.
Yeah, so Lynn, you could definitely use your special egg poaching pot, but not everybody has one. So I just wanted to show everybody you can do this with a regular frying pan. You don't have to go out and buy any special equipment to get a poached egg that's perfect. You just have to know the techniques of how to do it. So hopefully now you feel empowered to do that. All right, I have a little egg pan here. This is my scrambled eggs for 2. And I'm just gonna add some butter to the bottom of that pan. And you do wanna get the butter nice and melted. So you wanna kind of make sure it's completely melted over a low, you're gonna cook your scrambled eggs over a low heat. So this is something that a lot of people get wrong, I think, is they turn up their heat too high and then the egg just gets really dried out. So I'm using butter. You could use olive oil. Some people swear olive oil is better. And you just want to melt that butter until it's just starting to kind of foam up. And then we'll add our scrambled egg. You always want to season, salt, pepper.
Shirred eggs.
Okay, did we get an answer on the shirred eggs?
It says, JM said that she's not the one who put it in, but that she says it is eggs that are baked, usually in a ramekin. I looked it up myself.
Oh, okay, cool.
It says
that makes sense.
And I
Shared eggs.
that's how you say it. You can
Shared
hear that?
eggs.
Shared
Yeah,
eggs.
I did. Awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone. So our butter is sizzling and our eggs are, we're gonna add those in just enough to kind of make a little sizzle. Okay, and again, you want it on a low heat. Now this is where things get a little tricky, is people tend to go for a higher heat with our scrambled eggs. But use a spatula and you just kind of lift away the coagulated parts and move them to the side. Just keep gently moving. You want them to kind of coagulate and then move so something else can run underneath. All right, so nice, soft. If you just kind of lift it so the egg can run under. You don't want to stir too much because you want these nice, thick, soft curds, right? So nice, thick, soft curds. And once everything is soft, set, but still moist, that's when you take it off. So I always take off my scrambled eggs even just a minute or so before, like I'm going to turn the heat off now, even a minute or so before I think that they're done, because the residual heat from the pan will kind of finish them off. All right, so this is beautiful. Perfect, soft curds, done. Okay, you can see our scrambled eggs here. I really have to do something about the lighting in here. Maybe you guys can see better if I like, there we go, okay. Maybe there we go. All right, so this is our scrambled eggs, nice and soft. We've got our poached eggs, we've got our shakshuka, we have our quinoa burgers held together with egg, and that's our time, everybody. So any final questions before we wrap up?
No questions here.
Okay,
There's
well,
been
thank you
plenty.
so much. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Eggs is, again, there's so much to learn. There's so much to make with eggs. There's such a valuable part of our diet, wonderful thing to enjoy. In terms of heart health and eggs, speak to your cardiologist about how many eggs is right for you. There's a little bit of debunking going on as to how many eggs we can eat. So definitely talk to your cardiologist about that, because I think the news is good that we can eat more eggs than we thought. And they're a really handy source of protein, healthy fats, especially if you're getting wonderful pasture raised, certified humane is what to look for, or animal welfare approved eggs. Talk to your farmers also about their practices. Go to your local farmers market and engage in a conversation. Just say, hey, like, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you feed your chickens. I'm really curious. I took this egg class and I learned all this stuff, and I'm curious to learn more. So usually farmers are really open and happy to engage with their customers. So feel free to do that. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We have another class tomorrow, before I forget, our Physician in the Kitchen program with Dr. Agarwal. We're gonna be springing into health with Dr. Agarwal. It's gonna be a really fun and good class. So I'm looking forward to that. Hope to see many of you again. And as always, thank you to Alita for moderating our programs. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Enjoy the beautiful weather. Take care.
Bye-bye.